Hello, Astro friends. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're watching from. I'm Tim Connolly, and I'm live from New York. To be more accurate, I'm in the northern Adirondacks in the true upstate New York area. Today, we're going to unbox and set up the ZWO AM5 strain wave drive mount, which uses harmonic drive technology. I'm also going to show the carbon fiber tripod and the two Pier adapter options from ZWO. Towards the end of the show, I'll show the operation of the mount through the mobile ASIMOUNT app and the ASIAIR app live. I'm going to stop at the end of each section to answer any questions you may have. So please feel free to leave any questions or comments in the comment box at the bottom of the screen. So to start, let's unbox the mount. So I've been testing the original AM5 mount version since December of 2021. And this is a random production line version, which has the same features as the AM5s that you see that are currently shipping out to all the customers across the world. So it's great to see these mounts finally getting out in the hands of customers. I've been using it for a while. It's been very reliable. I've been having a great time. And unfortunately, the delays have just killed me as much as it's frustrated you. But trust me, it's very well worth the wait. I've absolutely fallen in love with this mount and prefer using this mount over other mounts I have. It should be mentioned the AM5 is a self-developed system by ZWO. This means they developed the system on their own, and it allows ZWO to sort out any mount issues in a quick and efficient manner. Some noticeable differences from the test version to the full release version is the lack of the green laser installed on the front mount plate. I found this to be an awesome feature to get a rough polar alignment. So without the laser, I'm going to be planning on using my compass and sighting in polar north. You can also just point it towards the roughly polar north, or you could use the all sky alignment in the ASIAIR app. And then this will fine tune the polar alignment inside the ASIAIR in the polar alignment feature. So since they got rid of the green laser, the front mount plate went to the laser plate went to a solid mount plate. There's a contest, and there was one of the winning selections. Actually, the winning selection was a child holding some deep space design balloons graphic, and it's etched on the front mount plate. I'll show you a picture up close of what it is. Although many, including me at the time, did not like the selection, after having it in my hand, I now find it to be a very nice graphic, and the etching came out sharp and well defined. So I went from not really liking this design to appreciating it. It does add a nice touch to the mount. Also, the azimuth knobs have been upgraded. Before they were tiny, really fine knobs. They were very tough to use, especially with my large sausage fingers. So there's better grips on them, and they're easier to fine adjust, especially in the cold temperatures. The AM5 comes packed nicely in a soft nylon, sturdy, durable zippered case. It also comes with a nylon shoulder strap, adjustable shoulder strap. And also, I'm just going to show you, let me just take the ASIAIR off my scope. There's a nice portable pouch spot for the ASIAIR Plus to fit in. Also in the package is the ASIAIR, or correction, the AM5 hand controller. And also there is a USB 2 cable and a 2-meter coiled cable for the hand controller to run the hand controller to the AM5 mount. There's also a M6 and an M4 Allen key in here to make portable adjustments while on the fly and while out in the field. And I'll show you, there's a really nice quick start guide that comes with the mount, and it's very descriptive about how to get set up and how to use it out in the field. And also there's a periodic error test report that's custom to each mount that gets sent out. It's custom to each serial number, so you'll see the serial number in the upper right corner. And there's also a scanner code, a QR code in the upper right corner where you can scan it on your phone and go to the ZWO server and get the full report. You can download it, share it with your friends. It's a very nice feature that they have. And so before we get into the periodic error test report, are there any questions about what is included with the AM5? And let me just go to my phone to see if there's any questions up. Okay, so Bob Waterfield says tilt the case so we can see inside it. I'm not sure if that's better. I'll go to another view here and see the hand controller fits nicely. There you go. So you can see it has the AM5, the ASIAIR Plus, the hand controller, and the coiled cable. And we can also fit the USB 2 cable right into it. However, I prefer to use the hand controller with the Wi-Fi to connect to the ASIAIR Plus, and I'll show you a little bit more about that as well. All right, any other questions before we move on? Okay, I see Mike Gibbs. This is a great question because I've had mounts that did this. Will the mount head dimple the dovetail bar on your scope? And the answer to that is no, it won't. And I'll show you exactly why. So as you can see, there's the saddle. It has the pressures. So there's no knobs that dig into the side of your dovetail plate. And there's two sizes, the narrow Vixen and the wider Los Mandy style dovetail bar slot. So it will not mar up your dovetail plate. Okay, so it looks like another question here is, does the ASIAIR mount come standard on the side of the AM5 as shown? Yes, it has the little foot on the side. That does come standard with it. And there's also a 12 volt, 5 amp DC output that we'll be talking about in a little bit as well. All right, so let's move on to the periodic error test reports. The customized test report's an important document that comes with the mount. Let's break the report down a little bit. ZWO decided to test every strain wave driver and provide a custom report for each mount. The strain wave driver factories do not give a report because of the high periodic error found naturally with strain wave drive mounts. They also usually will guarantee periodic error to be under 60 arc seconds. ZWO was the first and so far the only company to scrutinize the 60 arc second guarantee because this is very high and difficult to correct with guiding in astrophotography. So ZWO looks at this personalized report for each mount and ensures it is under plus or minus 20 arc seconds. The plus or minus 20 arc seconds and a maximum total of 40 arc seconds. So sometimes you'll notice some of the mounts that are out there that are shipping, you may get 36 total arc seconds. That's still very good and still will do the job of astrophotography very well. And this is what sets ZWO above the standard for companies developing similar harmonic mounts and guarantees a quality AM5 that'll perform well out of the box with a guide accuracy of 0.5 to 0.8 arc seconds. Unlike other companies who may also claim plus or minus 20 arc seconds, ZWO actually proves this with the custom periodic error reports and the labeled serial number assigned to that mount. And the report provides a full periodic error chart, and I'll show you my periodic error chart again. It's on the left side of the screen. And it goes out 360 degrees in 24 hours. A single cycle takes 432 seconds, and a single periodic displacement angle is 1.8 degrees. When you view the zoomed in view of the chart, and I'll show you the zoomed in view here, ZWO takes the high to low periodic error in arc seconds and divides that by the duration in seconds from the low to high point. This gives the guide accuracy in arc seconds under perfect seeing and with 1 second guide exposure. I just want to reiterate too that this is basically the best the mount will perform. It's theoretical, however, the lower the accuracy number, the better your mount will perform. And it's also with the 1 second guide exposure. The reason ZWO uses the low to high duration is because this is the quickest change and it'll show the worst number. If ZWO measured high to low, it would be a longer duration and can show better guide results instead of a worst case scenario. So different strain wave drives have varying distances between the high point and the low point in a single cycle. The longer it takes to go from the high point to the low point, the more stable the strain wave driver is. Here's an example of various full periodic error charts. So here you can see 4 periodic error charts. They're totally different ranges, different maxes, different minimum, different behavior. Strain wave drive harmonic type mounts naturally have greater periodic error than worm gear mounts, which can be as low as plus or minus 5 arc seconds. And here's an example of the worm gear on a worm gear mount. But to me, the benefits of the strain wave driver they're portable, there's no counterweights, and there's no backlash. And I'll show you an example of the strain wave drive in action. So you can see as it turns, there's always contact and there's no backlash. So that is the benefit of the harmonic drive mount. So let's look at my periodic error test report and break it down to determine the best guide accuracy. So I'll bring my report back up again. This AM5 has a maximum periodic error of 14.1 arc seconds and a minimum periodic error of 6.7 arc seconds. Now let's look at the zoomed in view. This is the zoomed in view of the periodic error. Remember, the single displacement angle is 1.8 degrees, and the single cycle time is 432 seconds. So we can see from the chart by looking at the two low points, and I'll put that up on the screen for you. The first low point is at 242.9 degrees, and the second low point is at 244.7 degrees. When we subtract 244.7 by 242.9, we get 1.8 degrees, which is the displacement angle. All right, so now we see the low point to the high point is 216 seconds, or about half of that 432 second cycle. Now look at the maximum periodic error, and we see it's about 14.1 arc seconds. Right here, 14.1 arc seconds, as confirmed by the chart and the test. So now we take the periodic error of 14.1 arc seconds and divide it by the 216 second duration, and it gives a guide accuracy of 0.0652 arc seconds. And again, this is basically theoretical under perfect seeing without any atmospheric distortion, and this is the best the mount would perform. So once you add the seeing and the atmosphere, we're guaranteeing the mount between 0.5 and 0.8 for the accuracy. But now if you drop the guide exposure to 0.5 seconds or half an exposure, this guide accuracy improves to 0.0326 arc seconds under perfect seeing. So I find this to be an excellent guide accuracy, and this is going to be a well-performing AM5 mount. So again, I want to reiterate, remember, this is without taking into consideration the seeing, and it's theoretical. The lower the guide accuracy, the better the mount will perform. Lastly, as I mentioned previously or earlier in the show, there's on the periodic error test report in the upper right corner, you can see there's a QR code. You can scan the code and access the online version to download, save, and share with your friends. And also, we have an article on the ZWO website. And the link is above in the title of this post, the live show, which has the 10 things you need to know about your custom AM5's periodic error test report. And that's provided by ZWO. And there's some good information in it. And just in case, I know I'm going kind of quick with this, and you can go back and reference and read it and understand it a little better. And so remember, the guiding accuracy depends on the sky conditions and seeing. The calculated guide accuracy is, in theory, the best the mount would achieve under the best of the best conditions. And it doesn't factor in the seeing. The guide accuracy will lead to nice guided images and round stars. And I'm going to put on the screen this image. This is with my Celestron 9 1/4 SCT at a focal length of 1,645 millimeters. And you can see the total RMS is about 0.74 arc seconds, with the RA as 0.61 and 0.42. So it's performing well. And I have to say, this is my test mount. So this isn't the new production mount that I just received. And I'm curious to see how this new test mount will compare to the test version. And I have a feeling it's going to perform very nicely. And here's another image of the stars, just showing the nice round stars that can be achieved at such a high focal length with the AM5. And notice this is a zoomed in view too. So now I'm going to stop here and take any questions about the test report before we move on. Okay, so I see Carlos Flores. He's asking, so you're saying that you'll have to polar align it manually. So what I do to polar align the AM5, before I was using the green laser. However, since they stopped putting that on the production versions due to the international rules and regulations, I'm just going to use my compass and I'm just going to point it to polar north. It's very simple as that. You can also use the ASIAIR app to uh, to fine tune the polar alignment. And there's also the altitude knobs uh, and the azimuth knobs, which I'll show you. And they're very smooth and very precise to adjust for to get an accurate polar alignment. So I hear see Manuel's asking, can I use my CG4 tripod for the mount, even with the north spike on the tripod? So Manuel, I'm going to talk about this in a little bit, but since you brought it up now, I'm going to talk about it now. I'm not sure which tripod you have on your CG4. This is my AVX tripod, and you notice I took off that azimuth post, and so I have a nice flat surface. So if you have the flat surface and you have a 3/8 inch center rod that comes up, that will fasten to the AM5. And I'll talk about that in a little bit with the compatibility. Okay, and I see ZWO is asking if I can tell the weight of my telescope. Uh, I would estimate the weight of my C 9.25 with everything on it is approximately 36 pounds. So it is a heavy scope, and that's with the weights and everything on it just to balance the Z axis a little bit. But the AM5 uh, handled it very nicely. And I see Eric Watson. Hi, Eric. Since you've been using your Edge HD 9 1/4 with AM5, what do you think the max payload it can handle? Will a heavier tripod be needed? So I didn't use the C 9 1/4 with the carbon fiber tripod, and this was just because I was very cautious and I was worried that it would tip over, because obviously when you're at your extreme east or west meridian, I just worry that it would tip. So I used the AVX tripod, and it handled it very nicely. And as far as the 11-inch SCT, I think it would work with short exposures or short guided exposures, or with planetary, it will handle it very nicely. I've even had my Lunt 152 on the AM5 for solar imaging, and it tracked the sun very nicely. And as you know, the 152 from Lund is very heavy with that the hydrogen alpha echelon and the pressure tuner on it. So that is a heavier rig. So Raminder's asking, can you polar align when the pole is obstructed or not visible from your site? With the ASIAIR, yes, you can with the All Star or the All Sky polar alignment. What I would recommend and do is use a compass just to point it to the best polar north as you can without sighting in Polaris, and also just go to the all sky polar alignment in the ASIAIR, and it'll walk you right into an accurate polar alignment. All right, so that looks like that's all of the questions there. So let's move on. So looking at the mount has a clean, smooth look, and it weighs only 12.1 pounds or 5.5 kilograms. I could easily put this in my backpack and hike with it, especially with the carbon fiber tripod. The mount has a strong load capacity of 28 pounds or 13 kilograms without the counterweight bar, and a weight of 44 pounds or 20 kilograms with the counterweight bar and the counterweight attached. So I just want to touch on that counterweight bar a little bit. Um, So I saw some for sale right now on AliExpress. However, I went down to the hardware store and I found a nice threaded rod, and I made my own with a little bit of work, but it came out nicely and it works. However, after having used the mount with and without the counterweight bar, I recommend not even using it. As long as your mount is secure and you have weights in the weight bag, and you're cautious and you test the mount out, it'll be safe, especially if there's no wind, nothing to worry about knocking it over. So with all my rigs, I don't even use the counterweight bar. And if you're on the fence or you're looking to buy the counterweight bar, I would try out the mount first before you spend the money to buy the counterweight bar. And as I said earlier in the show, the saddle accepts both the skinny Vixen style dovetail and also the wider Los Mandy dovetail bars. So this makes it simple to swap out the scopes and without the need to change things over or get adapters. And as previously asked, somebody asked if it would mar up the uh, bar count, the dovetail bar, and it's no. The answer is no. You can see how there's a nice pressure, uh, nice piece of surface area that just compresses onto the bars. So it does not mar up your dovetail at all. And as we mentioned too earlier, there's also a finder shoe on the side of the mount, which is a perfect spot to mount a green laser or the ASIAIR. And I actually plan on using this side mount for my solar imaging because I don't usually put my ASIAIR on the solar scope. I usually have it hanging underneath the rig, and that way it's controlling from below. And you can see there's also a 12 volt 5 amp DC output on the side of the mount. And we'll talk about that a little bit later about powering it. And while we're talking about the weight, let's take a look at the tripod. I'm just going to put the mount away for a minute. And here's the ZWO TC40 tripod. And it's incredibly lightweight and portable. And I'll show you what's inside the box, what it came with. It comes with the standard tripod, the mount plate, which is inside. And you can take this right out. And it also came with the weighted bag or sling. And also it came with 3 spikes for stable setting. You can see that right now I have the rubber grips on, just so when I bring it inside, I can put it on the wood floor. But the rubber, they're actually great shock absorbers, but you can replace those with the spikes and really drive it into the ground for better stability. And the carbon fiber tripods, obviously constructed with carbon fiber. There's a nice, it's almost like a neoprene grip. So when the weather's cold or you're out there cold, imaging in the cold, you can actually grab this and it's nice and warm for portability and moving it around. So it weighs in at about 5 pounds or 2.25 kilograms, and it folds up to a height of 20 inches or 508 millimeters. It's a perfect tripod for camping or putting in your hiking pack to bring it up to a mountain or up to a remote area or your dark sky location. And the tripod itself has a hefty 110 pounds or 50 kilogram load capacity. The tripod comes with the tripod, a weight bag, the sling, and the silver mount plate, which I already said. Just remember to use to use the weights on the sling if you're using a heavier scope, because you don't want it's so light that you don't want it to get top heavy and fall over. So ZWO offers two Pier extension options. The first is a solid stackable Pier extension. And here you go, you can see it right in front of me. And here's my measuring tape. So each section, you're going to have to use two of the stacked units for the AM5 and the tripod, just because the way it mounts and adapts to the tripod, two stackable sections are required. So the two sections are 5.5 inches and about 14 centimeters, so 140 millimeters in length. And you can see you can stack them right on each other. That way your scope, when it's looking at zenith or you're taking your flats, you don't have to worry about the scope hitting the tripod. So the second option, which was just announced today on the ZWO site, and this is actually my favorite, is what I'm calling the tri-pier extension. It's lighter, it has 3 bolts which come up from the base, and you see a lot of piers actually with the 3-bolt construction, and it's actually very strong and stable. Uh, as I said before, it's lighter, um, and each bolt is actually uniquely fitted with a recessed bolt pattern, so it snaps in to the top, or on the bottom there's a recessed circle for added strength and durability. The recommended weight capacity of the tri-pier is lighter than the solid pier, and it's recommended to not put a scope on your AM5 that's over 10 kilograms. So 10 kilograms is the limit for the tri-pier. And the reason for the 10 kilogram capacity is due to the lightweight and the extra height, which will make larger, heavier scopes unstable, and you're more prone to tipping the setup over. So I'm going to stop here and look for any questions you may have. So Terry asks, what is the max exposure this mount can handle? So was doing 1 minute untracked, well, 1 minute tracking only unguided images, um, with minimum star trails. However, you got to remember that these harmonic strain wave drive mounts have very high periodic error, so you're going to want to guide it. And so with my 3 nanometer filters, I was guiding with 10-minute exposure, 600 seconds with no issues. And then Harold, this is a great question. Does the AM5 need future maintenance, like adjustments of the gears? So I've been using this in extreme cold temperatures. Back in December, I live in the northern Adirondacks, so it's common for us to hit negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit. And so I've had this mount in the extreme cold. Obviously, there's a temperature warning about that, and the mount performed well for me, although it was exceeding ZWO's recommended temperatures. As far as anything being serviced or maintained, everything is internal, it's sealed. And so you're not going to have the exposed belts or the exposed drives. So it's very minimal maintenance on this. And David Schilling asks, how do you balance your scope? So I was going to show later on, but I'm going to show this right now. To balance the scope, all I do is take a dowel, and I'll balance it. I'll try to find the center of gravity. So once I find that center of gravity, I put that right in the middle. I put that right in the middle of the saddle. That way, I mean, you for a little scope like this, you really don't need to balance it at all. But I mean, I've been imaging for a while, and it's good practice to have it balanced, although it's not required. And Diego's asking, so the counterweight bar is required to avoid tipping over, but not required by the strain wave drive itself to handle it properly. And Diego, that is correct. The counterweight bar and counterweight is only required for basically just preventing it from tipping over. And I've had some large scopes, and if you're on the ASI mount page, you can see I put Explore Scientific 152 on it without the counterweight bar or a counterweight, and it handled it just fine. But of course, I wasn't using the carbon fiber tripod. I was using the heavier duty tripod with the AM5 mounted to that. And Eric's asking, speaking of the counterweight bar, what is the max counterweight you can put on that mount? So, on the recommendation on the frequently asked questions, there's a good topic on that, and I believe it's 11 pounds. Let me just see. Yeah, so the max you want to use is about 11 pounds or 5 kilograms, and the counterweight bar should be secured on the counterweight bar of no more than 25 centimeters in length, and that's on the ZWO AM5 mount frequently asked questions where I pulled that from. And Tariq Abdullah says, "Hi all, is this live now?" And yes, we're live from the Northern Adirondacks, just outside of Plattsburgh, New York. And the sun is setting here, and looks like there's some passing clouds overhead. And this video will be put on YouTube after the live video, so you can always go back and rewatch it. And Alejandro is asking, is it really so accurate in object tracking? And because the periodic error is very high, you're going to want to guide. However, if you look at my solar images where I was imaging at a great focal length with my Daystar Quark, because the Quark has a 4.2x Barlow, so I'm zoomed in at a high focal length on the sun, and I was locked onto the sun without guiding. Usually I do have the Hinode solar guider. However, I didn't even use that. I just locked onto the sun without the solar guider, and it tracked very nicely, stayed on the active region while I was imaging. So I would say it tracks pretty well. So when you're out there imaging the planets, and you can adjust the modes. So there's different tracking modes, and we'll talk about that once we get into the ASI Mount app and the ASIAIR. So you can change the tracking speeds. And Alejandro also asks, is it so noisy? And the answer to that is no. Um, I use this out in the backyard, and actually, when it's raining and I'm doing indoor tests on new firmware, new ASIAIR versions, testing it out, and it's about 10, 11 o'clock at night. My wife and my 7-year-old son are sleeping in bed. I'm out in the living room with it, and it's actually very quiet. It's quieter than my Ioptron SEM 70. It's quieter than my AVX mount, and there is a beep on it, but you can turn the beep off in the ASIAIR app. So Ontario Telescopes and Accessories, that is a slick looking scope. And just to mention, I use the Gear 80. It's an 80 millimeter APO refractor, and I love it. It has a reducer on it that's adjustable, and it really fine tunes my back focus. So thanks for that comment, Ontario Telescopes. And again, that's the Starfield Optics Gear 80 that I'm using on it. And then Tariq with another question here. He asks, all harmonic mounts I see are stopping at about 18 to 20 kilograms. Why? Can I use my 10-inch RC scope with accessories on them? Tariq, I'll follow up with a question. How heavy is your 10-inch RC scope? Um, And I'll go back to that question and we'll move on. And Jason Cousins, good evening, TJ, and good evening, Jason. Thank you everybody for joining us tonight here. I'm just glad the rain held off. Yesterday it was a rainy day, and this evening we're lucked out for this. So moving on. Okay, so Tariq said the scope is about 33 pounds alone. Just to give you a heads up, my C9 1/4 is 32 pounds, or 36 pounds, I'm sorry. So it is comparable to my 9 1/4 SCT with all the gear on it. And the reducer on the SCT scope's pretty heavy. Okay, so let's move on to the next portion. So let's install the AM5 to the tripod and the Pier extension. And so the first step I'm going to do, I'm going to take out the legs, extend the legs out. And I have a chair out here. I don't like sitting down. I like to stand. But if I need to sit, I'll sit down for you, or I'll lower the camera down. Okay. So let me just lower this down just a little bit. There we go. Okay, so now what we're going to do, this doesn't feel level here. There we go. One of the legs wasn't extended out. There we go. So you can see there's the weight bag here. And sometimes when I'm out imaging, I'll throw one of my counterweights just in the bag just to add a little bit of extra stability. Although it's not needed with the wider field refractors. So now we're going to take the silver mount plate out. And you can see it's threaded on, so I'm going to take all the adapters off it. The spreader bar. And also the threaded rod. And you'll notice there's a long side on the threaded rod and a short thread on, or short end on the threaded rod. You're always going to want to use the shorter end to go up into the Pier adapter or the mount base. And so now we're going to attach this to the base of the tripod. Actually, the base of the AM5 mount. And to do that, I'm just going to get the AM5 out. And you can see there's three screws. We're just going to take them out with the Allen key. Let me see if there's... So here's a little better angle for you. So there's the three screws. I'm just going to take them out real quick. There's one out. There's two out. And the third one out. So now we have the silver mount plate. We're going to put this on. You can see there's three screws and there's a center threaded rod. So I'm going to put this on the mount and then put those screws back on that I just took out. So this mount plate is only included with the tripod. You won't see it with your in your mount case if you don't order the tripod. And there's a lock washer on it, so it's not going to come undone or loosen up on you. And I'm hoping these clouds break tonight because I'm really excited to get this mount out underneath the stars tonight. So I really want to see how it guides. And I'll just give each screw a little extra twist. There we go. And so now I'm just going to put this over to the side. I'll bring the tripod back over. And now you'll notice the silver base on the bottom of the AM5 is actually the same design, same size as the bottom of the Pier adapter. So this is really cool. So it just goes right on. And I'm going to be a little OCD on this. So I'm going to put the 3 bolts that come up in line with the tripod legs. So I'm just going to put that like that. And remember I said about the threaded rod here, you put the smaller end up. So you put the smaller, shorter end threaded rod right up into it. And now we're going to put the plate, the spreader plate. I'll just show you a little better angle on this. Okay, we're going to put the spreader plate under it. And now we're going to put the knob on. Just adjust this better. And this is my first time putting it on, so I'm just kind of just trying to look and see how it goes. There we go. So actually, let me see if this works. So with the AM5, we use the shorter end going up first. I just want to see if this will... Yeah, so I'm going to switch back over to the shorter end. Oh, that's why. My tripod legs weren't all the way outwards, so the spreader wasn't going all the way up into it. So there it goes. So I spread the tripod legs a little more. And now it goes right on. So now I'm going to align the three bolts with the tripod legs. And that's stable. So now there's a latching lock on the side. I'm just going to rotate that just to lock it down. And there you go. So now it's lightweight. And you can see that it's solid. It's not going anywhere. And I'm not going to put the grass spikes on it. I have the rubber feet, but just because I bring it into my house at the end of the night. So it's very stable and durable. So now Let me just pause here and see if there's any questions up to where we're at right now. Okay. So Mark Sellers, he's asking, good day, TJ, from Sydney, Australia. Does ZWO sell or come with the balance bar for the AM5? And right now it's not posted, but ZWO is planning on producing and selling a counterweight bar and counterweight for the AM5. However, it's really, in my experience, depending on what scope you plan on putting it on, if you're using a rugged, heavy duty tripod, it's not needed. If you're using a lighter tripod, like the carbon fiber tripod, and you're exceeding their recommended weight limit, I would recommend using the counterweight bar and the counterweight on it. So Bob, is there room in the case to leave the mount plate attached to the mount? And yes, there is. I'll show you that real quick. All right, so here you go. Here you can see the AM5s in the case. Tilt it over a little bit more. So the AM5's in the case with the ASIAIR Plus, the AM5 mount, and also the silver mount plate in place. So there's plenty of room in there, plenty of room to add some extra cables, your tools, the hex wrench, and your hand controller and the hand controller cable. So it's a little windy here up in the northern Adirondacks. So I have some papers blowing around. I'm just going to pick up real quick. There we go. All right, so let me put the AM5 back on the pier and we'll continue from where we left off. And I see ZWO commenting that they're going to be releasing the counterweights and the counterweight bar. So Ontario Telescope and Accessories, is there a threaded hole in the bottom of the mount so it can be adapted to other tripods or piers? And the answer to that is yes, there is. There's a 3/8 of an inch threaded hole on the bottom. And I have the silver mount plate on it right now. But once I take these 3 screws off, there's a threaded hole in the bottom, and so that's how I attach it to uh, my other tripods. So I'll just put this on the flat platform of the AVX tripod or the smaller Ioptron tripod. Right here, you can see there's a flat platform and also a 3/8 of an inch threaded rod coming up that'll adapt to the AM5 mount. And you can see the other thing I like about this Pier, the tri-Pier adapter, I can just grab it by one of the bolts and move it around very easily and lightly. So it actually makes it very handy. It will make it very handy moving it in and out of the house for portability. All right, so Andrew Hayes, this is a good question. Sorry, I think I may have already been answered, but does the mounting plate come with the mount if I don't order the tripod? No, it only comes with the tripod because it sits in the center. However, if you're not planning on using the carbon fiber tripod and you want to use another tripod that has a threaded rod, it's a nice flat flush surface for it to mount onto your Pier or your other aftermarket tripod that you're going to use. So Lee Seegers, how much side-to-side flex will that extension create when loaded with, say, a long refractor? If I tinker with the camera on the end while set up, will it throw off the polar alignment? So I'm not really understanding that question too much, Lee. If you could ask it again. Are you asking side-to-side flex from as long as you're using a stable tripod and you have weights in the weight sling, it's a very stable, and you shouldn't have flex as long as you're setting it up stable, very stable, and not just like with the carbon fiber tripod and a long refractor. Then I can see some flex happening, and it'll throw off the polar alignment. So Greg asks, I have a William Optics 1000 millimeter tri-mortar Pier with an adapter plate that uses a 3/8-inch threaded bolt. That's what I'm going to be using with mine when I get it. And Tariq is asking, can you remote or control the mount without the ASIAIR, say with the mobile app or the tablet? And yes, you can. And I'm going to show you that shortly. And Mike Gibbs, which Ioptron tripod is that? That is the SkyGuider Pro tripod. All right, so that's all the questions going down the line. So let's move on. So as I said earlier, the tripod has a black weight sling in the middle region, and ensure you have adequate weight so the scope and tripod do not trip over or tip over. And this will make the mount a lot more stable. And this is very important, and I cannot stress this enough. I know there's going to be several users who will underestimate this. I see it all the time with people using their wheelie bars and rolling their scopes out down the driveway, and their scope topples over. I think as people start using this, because this is new technology at a lower cost. So there's a strong demand for it. So I see accidents happening. So I just want to make sure everybody's aware. Don't underestimate this weight, and make sure that you're using a stable tripod, you're using weights, anchoring it down. Even a strong gust of wind, if you're extreme to the western meridian or eastern meridian, it could topple your mount right over. Okay, so as I said earlier, and I'm just going to go over this again, let me just tighten the AM5 down. So on the tri-pier, there's three little levers. You can turn them clockwise, and it'll lock the mount right down onto the tri-pier. So now we're totally stable, and it's lightweight, and it's portable. So on the bottom end here, you can see the threaded cap. This threaded cap you can take out, and there's that M12 by 1.75 coarse thread screw hole. So I'm going to just grab my homemade counterweight bar. Just going to undo the bolt on top. And you can see I have it. It's homemade. It has a bunch of spacers on it. It works perfect for what I want to do as a counterweight. You just put it right in, and it threads right in. And you just tighten it down, and it's not going to go anywhere. So now I use my Celestron 11-pound counterweight, and I'll actually put that right on the end here. And like I said before, balance doesn't affect these mounts. So you're just using the extra weight to balance for a heavier scope, which I have found is not needed with these, as long as the tripod is secure and it's not going to tip over. And you can see it's my homemade counterweight bar is just a threaded rod. So I'm going to replace the cap back on here. And we'll move on. And so as I mentioned, the counterweight bar and the counterweight are only meant for better stabilization to keep a heavy scope from falling over. And if you do decide to go on AliExpress, or you don't want to wait for ZWO to release their counterweight bar, it's a M12 with a 1.75 coarse tooth thread. And ensure the bar is 10 inches or 25 centimeters in length. And the maximum weight on the bar is recommended to be 11 pounds or 5 kilograms. And again, this is only for balancing the scope on the AM5 so it doesn't tip over. I tried it with and without the counterweight bar. It had no effect on the guiding performance or guiding accuracy. And so, again, contrary to what you think and what you would expect, it's only for balancing the heavy scope so they don't flip the tripod and crash into the ground. And it doesn't improve the guiding. Okay, so now that we have it all set up, I'm going to stop and see if there's any more questions. So David Schilling, people who ordered the AM5 in December 2021 had to wait 6 months. If I order now, how will I also have to wait 6 months, or are deliveries speeding up now? So unfortunately, it's hard to predict how the supply is. I mean, there's global shortages. I'm hoping that with everything opening back up and people going about their lives, that things are going to start picking up again, but it's unpredictable. I know there's several people, there's been orders shipping out in June, and hopefully there's more to come in July, August, September. And I hope that the wait isn't an additional 6 months, because I really want to see these mounts getting out in the hands of customers and out and using. Because I admit, for the last 6 months, it's been very boring for me testing this mount out. I mean, it's been fun, but it's been boring because I like to talk to people about it, and people would accuse me of showing off or bragging about it, when actually Simon and I are out there testing the new features, trying to get the drivers up to speed and finding different bugs with it, which they all seem to be worked out now, because I use this, my test version, nightly. Every clear night, I'm bringing it out in my backyard and imaging. So I just want to see it in the hands of the customers now. Lee, the EQ6Rs had a problem with the Pier extensions allowing some flex side to side. No matter how tight you got them, they still had some movement. This setup seems to use the same principle. So Lee, I have not used this tri-Pier adapter yet. If it clears up, I'm going to use it tonight for the first time. It's been boxed up and I just took it out for the show tonight. But I have been using the solid Pier adapter. And the solid Pier adapter uses 3 bolts, kind of snaps the 2 sections together, and then it goes on. So it is a solid adapter, and there has been no flex with this, because I use this with my larger and longer refractors, and my polar alignments maintain the entire night with that. All right, Tim Martin's asking about ASCOM. Yes, it's supported. We have ASCOM drivers out there. I actually saw one of the new customers who received their AM5 out using it with Nina. So that's very encouraging. And then Francois, hi TJ, how easy is it to replace the saddle if I want to use a third-party one? There's really, I don't know if you can see right here, there's 4 bolts. So these 4 bolts will remove the saddle. My question to you would be, why do you want to swap out the saddle? I find this saddle to be very lightweight. It matches the mount, and it's actually very nice to use, smooth bolts. There's nylon washers on the side here. So I find it to be high quality, and what you would see with these aftermarket adapters that are out there. So kudos to ZWO for designing such a nice mount and saddle. And so ZWO says the deliveries are speeding up now, so you don't have to wait long, which is excellent news. So go ahead, get your orders in, and hopefully ZWO gets them out to you quickly so we can have some fun with these AM5 mounts. So Jason Cousins, comparing the EQ6R versus the AM5, pro versus con. So before I was using the AM5. I was using a Celestron mount. I was their Celestron tester with the AVX, the CGEM DX, and I was I loved my Celestron mounts. I got the Ioptron SEM 70, and I've it's in my pod, my Skyshed pod. But my preferred mount is this harmonic drive, strain wave drive AM5 mount. I love it. It's portable. It guides very nicely, and it's a lot of fun to use with the ASIAIR app. I really like it, and I'll show you once I set up the ASIAIR on it, because all the Wi-Fi is right through the hand controller, so I don't need a USB cable going to the mount from the ASIAIR. So comparing the EQ6R to the AM5, you got to remember EQ6R will have lower periodic error than the AM5. However, the AM5 is not going to have any backlash, and it's lighter. There's no counterweight, so you don't have to worry about balancing like you would have to do with the EQ6R. And Pete Becker, is there a way to star align the mount for visual go-to use like the other brands without using the ASIAIR and a camera? And the answer to that is yes. So with the AM5 mount app, which I'm going to show you shortly, I'll show you how to align. Basically, you point the mount to the north. You just basically tell it to go to an object, and then you can manually slew to that object and then go to align, and it will align the mount on that target. And then Jason Cousins, will this work with the ASIAIR Plus VA Pro? So this will work with both the ASIAIR original version, the Plus version, and the Pro version. So it'll work with all three. And Lee Seegers, I can tell you an EQ6R is very heavy. I sold mine as it became too much to deal with every night. I'm looking at this as a replacement as it's much lighter. And Lee, you're absolutely right. I'm right-handed, and look at this. I can lift it right up with my left hand. I can do this all night long. And then with my right hand, it's even easier. So it's incredibly lightweight. And Rolando, this is a good question. Is a counterweight needed when using an 8-inch Edge HD? And I would say it depends on the tripod you're using. If you're using uh, the carbon fiber tripod, I would always recommend it, just so if you're extreme on the east or west meridian, you don't have to worry about it moving around or tipping over or somebody bumping it and then sending it over on its end. So Andrew Hayes, I saw indie drivers have been released, so we'll work with K-Stars, etc. now too. And you are correct. You are correct on that. And Peter Dieterlein, have you experimented using a side-by-side system, DSLR camera lens on one side and a small wide field refractor on the other? And no, I have not tried that. I am going to be looking into that because I do have a side-by-side solar scope. I have a 60 millimeter Lunt LS60 hydrogen alpha scope, and then I also have an 80 millimeter Lunt engineering refractor that I use for my calcium K filter. So I definitely would like to see if I can do side by side. And then Prashanto, why the inner sides are not straight on the top of the saddle? What do you see that isn't straight? It may not appear to be straight because I'm on uneven ground, but let me try to get this as level as I can. But they are straight. If I look down it and I look at the level here, it goes straight down to the ground. And I'll actually even line it up with the tripod leg, which will be easier to see as well. Yep. Yeah, so it's straight. The saddle is straight on this mount. And then Laura is asking, do you recommend any particular guide camera? I presume being harmonic, it'll need to work with one for multi-star fast 0.5 arc seconds. I know some Rainbow users had success guiding in IR. So Laura, I use on my Starfield Optics Gear 80. I on this scope I use a ASI 462 MC OSC guide camera on that with a 60 millimeter guide scope at a focal length of 240 millimeters. On my Celestron 9 1/4, I was using an ASI 174 mm with the off-axis guider, and I was able to use 1 second exposures on that. But for obviously with the 60 millimeter guide scope, I use the half a second exposure on that. And Kurt, this is a good question too. Do we need to download the AM5 app if we're using the ASIAIR Plus? So I would recommend downloading the AM5 app just for the purpose of updating the mount firmware and the hand controller firmware. And I'll show you how we do that momentarily. Okay, and then back to Prashanto. No, actually, it was asking the inner sides are not a straight line, but middle portion, our sides are depressed a bit. Inner sides are not straight line, but the middle portion. Both sides. Inner sides. I'm not sure what you're saying by that, but go ahead and take a picture or screenshot of this, and then I'll mark it up and show me what you mean by that, so I can try to get an answer for you on that question. Because it does look straight and fine to me. I don't know if you're meaning about these recessed spots, and that's just where the the dovetail bar goes to cinch onto it. Okay, so Lee's asking, let us know more about the mount via wireless with the ASIR in the system. I've read it can be controlled through the air, but no explanation of how the connections are made wirelessly. And Lee, you're in luck because that's exactly how I use this mount every time. So I'll walk you right through setting this up, and it's so simple to do. And Bob says, I think it's the camera angle. Marvin, is this recorded so we can watch if we miss the first part? Yes, I'm recording this. It's going to be posted on the ZWO YouTube channel and the Facebook page, so you can watch the whole version of this. And then Tariq, I asked about controlling the ASIR, so I'm waiting that. Okay, yep. So I'll show you how to control it uh, with the ASI mount app. You can also control it with a PC. Tonight, I'm not going to get into that, um, but I'll show you how to use it in the ASI Mount app and the ASIAIR. Okay. All right, having that done, let's move on to the next portion. Okay. And just bear with me for a minute. I'm going back on to get my photographs back in line because I stopped for a little bit. It's paused for me. Okay, so now that the mount's installed on the tripod and the tri-pier, let's look at the altitude and azimuth adjustments on the mount. So you'll notice there are tension levers on the side. This is what basically loosens up to allow the altitude adjustments. And you can see I can adjust the altitude fairly simple with just one finger, and it's very smooth and precise. The nice thing about the lever, some people say, oh, you're going to get your cable snagged on the lever. You just have to be strategic about it so it doesn't get snagged. And also, having the lever like this, you don't need a wrench or a tool like some other companies out in the field that you could lose the wrench, the Allen wrench, on the ground. And speaking of that, I was just reaching in my pocket to see where my Allen wrench was. And so there are two gear adjustments with the altitude because obviously they're for different latitudes. The AM5 allows for latitudes from 0 degrees to 90 degrees, and the first gear range allows a latitude range of 0 to 60 degrees, and the second gear allows a latitude range of 45 to 90 degrees. So to switch to gear 2, while in gear 1, we want to loosen the latitude tension grips, which are these black levers on the side. And then now that they're loose, we're going to see if I can get a better camera angle for you. So on the side, you'll see a hex lock screw. So you want to loosen that and loosen the other side. And then you can see it slides pretty easily. So for my latitude, I'm at 45 degrees north. So I'm going to go to the second gear. And I'm going to tighten the hex lock down. And once it's locked down, now I can adjust the altitude lever and see how easy that turns and spins. And so there's a latitude scale on the side. I'm going to bring that right to 44 degrees. And look at that go. Goes just like butter. Okay. So now I'm going to tighten down the sides here. And now we're all stable. We're tightened and we're ready to go. So you can see there's also some altitude or the azimuth knobs, which are on the side. So these are the locks on the side. So you can lock it down and then it's not going to move, or you unlock it. And unlock is flush with it. To lock it, you pull that out and it'll stick out a bit, and then it's not going to go anywhere. So now the next step, what I'm going to do is plug in my hand controller. And the other benefit of using the azimuth knobs on this mount, there's no real metal on metal that's going to be jumping around. So with some other mounts that I use, I hate when I'm trying to polar align and I adjust it a little bit and then the azimuth jumps. That doesn't happen with the AM5. It's nice and smooth and it slides very nicely. So I said the next step is to plug in the hand controller to the mount. And you can either use the hand controller or you can use the USB 2 cable. If you're using the USB 2 cable, you really don't even need to use the hand controller. So you could just leave the hand controller unplugged. But I like connecting to the Wi-Fi on the hand controller. So I'm going to plug in the hand controller. The nice thing about this Pier, there's the hooks here. You can hook the hand controller right to the side of it. And here you go. Here's the hand controller. I put one on the screen so you can see it on there, just so you can see what I'm talking about. And this, like I said, this is my preferred method to connect the ASIAIR to the AM5 is through the Wi-Fi on the hand controller. And as you can see, it's not a conventional hand controller you're used to seeing on some of the other mounts. It fits nicely in your hand, and it's small, and there's a rocker joystick like a video game controller, which allows simple and easy manual slews. I find this perfect for visual viewing, solar imaging, lunar, planetary imaging. And if you press down on the rocker, the slew speed will toggle between fast and slow. The light at the top of the controller will indicate which mode is being used. If the light is on, the fast slew speed is on. If the light is off, then obviously the slow slew speed is on. The low speed will slew the mount 1, 2, 4, or 8x, while the high speed will slew the mount 20 to 1440x. And there's a button labeled T on the hand controller, which will start and stop the tracking. The button below has a round arrow. This is a very convenient button. This is the cancel button. So if you see the mount is slewing how you don't want it to, or you're trying to stop it from going to an object that you were slewing to, you can press that and stop the slew. You can also press and hold it for 3 seconds and it'll return to the 0 position or to the home position. And the AM5 is capable of being an equatorial mount or an alt-azimuth mount. And let me just take that off. The default mode on this is equatorial mode. So when equatorial mode is on, you'll have a red light indicator on the mount, and when the alt-azimuth mode is on, it'll show a green. And I have a little photograph of that shows. So you can see the arrow, it's pointing to the status light. So when that's red, you're in equatorial mode. When it's green, you're in alt-azimuth mode. And when you go to alt-azimuth mode, if you're using it for visual without a polar alignment, all you do is loosen up the you loosen up those altitude knobs and you bring it back to 90 degrees. So once it's at 90 degrees and you switch it to alt-azimuth mode, you're in alt-azimuth mode. It's very simple to do and you can go about your day or your night. So now that everything is sturdy and stable, let's talk about the power. Actually, before I get into power, let me just pause here and I'm going to take a look and see if there's any more questions. I want to try to stay up on the questions. So Michael Marinick, does tightening sometimes move the out or as? So you saw how easy it was, so I'm going to loosen it a little bit. So when I'm polar aligning the altitude, I'll make slight adjustments, and then I keep this not super loose, but just on the edge. So when I do go to tighten it, it's a very gentle tightening. And I have the weight in the tripod sling, so it will not knock the mount over offside or affect the altitude. And then same thing with the azimuth. I'll leave it just on the edge here. I'll make my slight adjustments, and then I'll tighten it down really easily. So it doesn't get into that, and it doesn't knock it out of polar alignment. And then Lee, we all know the pains of doing polar alignment in the air with various vendors' mounts. How's the response from moving the adjustments when doing a polar alignment? And Lee, it is very smooth. Let me just loosen this again, and you can see I don't have any weight in the tripod, so I'm just holding it with my hand. And you can see it's very simple. I could use my pinky, and it's very responsive, and you just make slight adjustments and you'll see the change in the polar alignment feature in the ASIAIR. And same thing with the azimuth. Once it's unlocked, it's very, you can see it's, let me turn the mount a little bit more. You can see it's very easy and fine to adjust, just with a little bit of movement. And you can see, I'll move it a little bit closer. You can see there is a post for the azimuth, but it's not like other manufacturers where you have a square design. It's nice and rounded, so it's very effective with adjustments. And Lee's asking, wait, so the Wi-Fi is built into the hand controller, not the mount itself? And yes, you are correct. The Wi-Fi is built into the hand controller. And then Lee says, that kind of sucks, to be honest. It would be much better to have it in the mount and not a device that has to hang there. And Lee, the way this mount is designed, the AM5, you're only rotating on one axis. So when it rotates, you're not really moving to get it tangled with anything. So it really doesn't bother me. And I think you get better Wi-Fi connection with it in the hand controller, so you don't have the interference from the electronics or the gears or any other types of signal. So it keeps it nice and clean. And I've never had an issue connecting to the Wi-Fi in the hand controller. It's very quick, reliable, and responsive. And Francois says it doesn't suck because the mount is made of metal and the hand controller is made of plastic, which won't affect the Wi-Fi signal range. And Francois, you're exactly correct. It's kind of the same case with the original ASIAIR in the plastic Raspberry Pi box before it went to the Pro. I mean, you all saw how it diminished the Wi-Fi range. So this, having it in the plastic case, I get very nice signal and connectivity. Even when I don't have the ASIAIR and I'm using the ASI mount on my tablet, I can walk a great distance and still stay connected to the hand controller. So you're exactly right. And Andrew, so is the hand controller also a Wi-Fi antenna as well with that long lead? I think everything is internal built into the hand controller. But it is nice to have the Wi-Fi signal coming from this. All right, so those are all the questions there. Let's move on to the next section. So powering the mount. The AM5 requires a minimum 12 volt to 3 amp power supply to power the mount. If you notice, there's also a 5 amp output on the side of the mount. So if you're going to use this 5 amp output, you're going to want to use a larger power supply, like a 12 volt 5 amp to a 10 amp, 12 volt 10 amp power supply to be able to power, like say, the ASIAIR off the side of the mount. One thing, even though it is capable of the 3 amps for power supply, I would recommend powering the mount separately and not powering the mount through the ASIAIR. The power consumption of the mount is 12 volts by 0.4 amps on standby, 0.6 amps on tracking, and 1.5 amps on the go-to slews. All right, so now that the mount's set up, I'm going to mount the Starfield Optics Gear 80 scope, and I'm also going to put the ASIAIR Plus back on it so you can see that going on. So as I mentioned earlier, when I'm putting the mount on the scope, I'll use a wooden dowel and I'll figure out where the center of gravity is. And you don't have to do this. this is just something I do out of good practice. And when I do that, I know that the center of balance is around where the EAF focuser is. So now I'm going to put that EAF focuser right in the center of that saddle. So since it's centered, I'm going to tighten it right down. And you can see it does not mar my dovetail bar. It takes really good care of the bar, doesn't mark it up. I'm just going to tighten it, make sure it's all tight. And I'm just lowering the tripod a little bit so you can see it a little better. There we go. All right, so now that we have the Gear 80 on the AM5, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the ASIAIR Plus back on it. And then I'm going to put my dew heaters. My dew heaters I always put in the port 2 on the ASIAIR's DC output. And then I have my camera, which I put on camera output 1. There you go. You can see it a little better now. And then I have the camera USB. I'm going to put that in the USB 3 so I get the high speeds and the fast transfer speeds. And then I have my 2-inch EFW going right to the back of the camera. And I also have the power cable. So now I have the EAF on the side. I'm going to put that right into a USB 2 port. And then I have my 462 MC camera. I'm going to also put that right into the USB 2 port. And then I have one open USB 3 port, which even though there's the eMMC on this that saves it really fast, I like to use a USB 3 thumb drive. So I'll put the USB 3 thumb drive right in. And the only real reason, the only time I use the eMMC is when I'm planetary imaging or solar imaging, so I get the faster and higher frame rate. All right, so as you can see, I have the Gear 80 mounted. It's from Starfield Optics. It's 80 millimeter APO refractor. It's a lightweight. It's a great grab and go on this AM5 setup. I absolutely love this setup, and this is the first time having this production version out. Usually it's on my test AM5 test version, so I can't wait to get it out. And it looks like some overcast, so it's not clear yet, but I'm hoping after midnight it'll clear up. So I leave this scope set up on the AM5 all the time. In between sessions, I bring it inside and it stays set up. I'm not worried about it falling over, tipping, or anything, just because I'm very conscious about the weights and about the load on it. So let me just show you a picture of the setup there. So here's the Gear 80 set up in the backyard before a night of imaging. And then some of the images I've got off this, the elephant trunk. and that's with the 2600 camera. And then North American with the ASI 533 and then M101 with the um, ASI 533 Okay, and then here's my C9.25, and you can notice I have it on the AVX tripod just for more stability, and I also am using a OAG on that. And at 1,645 millimeters, here's a nice high focal length shot, and you can see the stars are nice and round on that as well. Okay. So, and I just want to add too that the 9 1/4 performed just as well on the AM5 as it did with my large German equatorial mount that's in my Skyshed pod. And it's the AM5 is a lot more portable to use, and it's easier to use, and I didn't have to worry about the balance like I do on my larger German equatorial mount. And like I said before, although balance isn't required, I still like to practice the best I can and balance it. Since there's no clutch release on the AM5, I use the dowel to find the center of gravity and then place it in the center of the saddle. And having that said, before we move on to the ASI mount app, let's see if there's any more questions. And Tariq says, I assume the hand controller is included with the mount and it's not a order separately. And you're correct. It's included with the mount, and it fits right in the nylon case that's included. And Mike asks, does the Wi-Fi on the hand controller work in station mode? Yes, it does, and that's how I actually connect to the ASIAIRs through station mode. That way you still have that free Wi-Fi signal. And then Tariq, don't forget to tell us about the temp that this mount can work. I have extremely hot weather here, and at night it is very warm. And if for solar daylight, it can go higher than 40 degrees Celsius, and humidity that leave dew inside maybe. And I think ZWO. So I've had the mount below the recommended temperature. I haven't had it above the recommended temperature because it doesn't get that hot here. And I haven't had any issues. Maybe ZWO can answer that as far as the higher temperature range. And hi, Tom. Thanks for joining us. And Francois says, notice that he doesn't need to balance the scope since it's strain wave gear mount. And yes, you are correct on that. And Steve says, amazing images, TJ. Thank you very much. And amazing star colors. And I didn't know this. Starfield Optics also makes a portable Pier that's compatible with the AM5. That's good to know as well. And Pete asked, will you be able to demonstrate the power failure protection feature? By the way, you're doing a stellar job with this. Thanks a lot, Pete. And that's actually after we do the ASI mount app, that's my one of my tests that I do. I'll pull the power in mid-slew so you can see the braking. And any luck testing this with a C11? And I know ZWO had a C11 on it. I don't have access to a C11, so I haven't tested it. The largest I've tested was my C9 1/4. And can you connect the ASIAIR with the mount 5 amp side port? Thanks. Yes, you can, Harold. Just keep in mind your output. If you're running your cooled cameras off the ASIAIR, you're going to want to supply it with enough amperage. And Austin asks, all up weight with guider cameras, ASIAIR, etc. So my Edge HD 9 1/4 with the reducer, because the reducer is extremely heavy on it. I weighed it, and it with the dew shield, because if you notice, I was using a dew shield on the top there, and there you go, just so you can see it. And that large reducer, it weighed in at 36 pounds. And that's just an approximate weight because it's so heavy. So I just jumped on the scale and then jumped on the scale, picked up the scope, jumped on the scale again, and just took the difference in weight. So it's not that scientific for the measuring or for the weighing. Steve, have you ever tried tracking and imaging the ISS? The only time I've tracked and imaged the ISS was during a solar transit. However, I want to try and see what I can do with the new gear and see what we can do. And Rolando, can we just buy the AM5 mount only? I guess it will fit my do-it-yourself Pier. And yes, you can go on and the ZWO website, which the link is above this, and you'll see a link right to the AM5 mount, and you can buy just the mount only. And there's my backup. ZWO says the recommended operating temperature is from -15 degrees Celsius to 40 degrees Celsius, but we can have some tests to see if we break the limitation. And I've been known to ZWO to break the rules and the laws, so I usually image in the extreme cold with it, and I really pushed this AM5 mount this past winter in the sub-zero, sub-20 degree temperatures. I think the coldest I had it was -25 degrees in December. And Greg says, I bought the mount. I'll use it with my William Optics 1000 millimeter mortar pier. That'll be a great setup. You'll love that. And Tariq says 40 degrees isn't a good idea for me if I want to use an extreme summer sometimes. How warm do you get, Tariq, where you are? How hot? Okay, so that's all done. I'm going to go back to the video and I'll collect some more questions in a little bit. So we're going to move on. And I just want to hit on this real quick. One of the main questions I am often asked is, does the AM5 support ASCOM? Yes, it does. It supports ASCOM, Indy, and it's also compatible with the LX 200 command set. All right. So now let's look at the mobile ASI Mount app. So I'm going to pull this up on the screen. And I'm just going to put my 11-pound counterweight. Remember, I'm very conscious about the weight, so I'm going to put that in the sling just to add some extra support. So now you can already see how much that increased the stability on the mount. And I'm going to bring the power cable over. So the power I'm going to apply from my 12 volt 5 amp power supply to the ASI or to the AM5 mount. And I'm going to power it right on. Okay, and I don't know if you heard that tone. The tone means that the AM5's powered on. All right, so the first step I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my Wi-Fi settings, and I'm going to connect to the AM5 AMH signal, which is the mount, and the passcode is 1234567 8. Type that in, and now we're connected. And now I'm going to wait for it spinning around. It's connected. And now I'm going to go, you can see the ASI mount app. I'm going to go into the Mount app. And here we go. So going into the ASIMOUNT app, you can see default, it's on Polaris. The blue box is what the scope is pointed at right now. And it's a planetarium at my fingertips. So I can slew around the sky. And there's the Chinese skyline there. Beautiful China. And good morning to China. And here's Andromeda. So now you can see the red box is what I'm looking at. So I'm going to go up to the search app. You see the hourglass up top. I can go through the messier objects. There's also a search button. You see the magnifying glass on the upper right corner. You can press on that and I can enter an object number. So I'll type in M33 and M33 brings up Triangulum. Now you see the go to and the center. If I click go to, it's going to go to Triangulum. If I hit center, it's just going to center it in the app without telling the scope to go to, or the mount to go to Triangulum. So now there's categories in the ASI mount. Comets, the NGC objects. Comets are really cool because you're able to, they update the database and you're able to see them. And there's numerous comets. It shows when they're high in the sky for you. So you can keep track of what's in there. So now going down to the FOV, target FOV settings, I can choose. So I have my 2600 camera. You can choose what camera you're using. And you don't have to be connected to the scope to access this. You can access the planetarium without being connected to the mount. And so you can see I can scroll through planetary, guide cameras, and even a custom camera. You can customize and get your pixels and your sensor size down. So go back to 2600, and you can see my sensor width, height. Then you change the scope focal length, and it'll give you your field of view. So now on the AM5 settings, you can see there's tracking. You have sidereal, solar, and lunar mode. And you can also see below that you have go to home position. If I want to go to home, I just press start, which it's already at home. It's already at Polaris. I haven't slewed yet. And you have mount mode and the AM5 hand controller manage system. That's where you update the hand controller and the mount. So now I'm just going to click on the AM5, the mount mode, and this will show you the how, and it gives you directions on how to set it to the alt azimuth mode, and it's a nice little description there. Then I can go back. I'm going to click on the updater. Just takes a minute to load. And now this is the hand controller management. So you can see it gives you the Wi-Fi, the info, hand controller info. In the center, there's firmware. This is where you would update the firmware. And this is why I would recommend having this ASI mount app, just so you can catch the updates as ZWO releases them. So now going back into the ASI mount, you can see there's serial number, version, and then we're going to go into the app settings. This is where you have the meridian, celestial, equator, equatorial coordinates. I just turned them on, so let's take a look at what that does. And you can see now I have the equatorial coordinates in the sky. You can also turn off the skyline if you don't want the skyline in there. And you turn off the coordinates. So that's how I have it. The scope's still pointed at Polaris, the blue box. So now you can see at the bottom, there's go to object. So I'm going to go to M31 Andromeda. And say I wanted a custom frame, which I'm going to show you. I'll just go off the target a little bit. So I'll go over to, let's see. There's a good one. So I'll go over to North America and Pelican. I want to frame them centered. So now instead of go to the object, I'm going to go cross. So go cross, see the cross in the center? now that's going to send the scope to center in the center of North America and Pelican. So now when I'm imaging, or even if I'm doing visual, and see the align button. So if say you go to Arcturus and Arcturus is off, I'll move it over with the red box and then I'll center it and then I'll click align and that will tell the mount where Arcturus is and it'll align it to it. So another cool feature is the compass. So say I'm out in the back with my son looking at the sky, looking at constellations. I click that compass in the upper right, and now anywhere I tilt my phone is it's going to tell me what I'm looking at. And this is a free app. It's free for anybody to download and use. So it doesn't have to be even be connected to the AM5 to use this feature. Okay, so now I'm telling it to go to home position. So I went into the AM5 settings and I clicked start and it's sending my mount to home. And then once I'm at home, I'm going to go back to the camera view for you. All right. So this is going to be the power test to show you. So I'm going to use the hand controller and I'm going to hold it down, the rocker switch. The red light's going to come on. So now I'm in fast mode. So, so let me I'm using Bluetooth speakers in my ears. So I'm going to put my ear right up close to it and you can barely even hear it. It's very quiet. So I'm going to almost go to zenith for you. And then I'm going to tell it to go home and I'm going to pull the power. So to go home, remember that reset button, the bottom button on the hand controller. I'm going to hold that down 3 seconds, and there we go. So now it's going home. Give it a little bit more, and pull the power, and it stops right there, dead in its tracks. So the braking works fine, and there's no issues with it. And I'll even rock it a little bit, and you can see it's totally stable. The brake's locked and engaged, and it's not going anywhere. So now I'm going to apply the power back. And the mount is able to tell where home position is. So once I power it back on, I'm going to push the go to home button again for 3 seconds, the reset button, and then we'll go back to the 0 position and home position. There you go. And real quick, one more time for that test, I'm going to bring it to the other side of the meridian. And that's the cool thing about this. The rocker switch, I can just basically control it, and it's so easy to control, just like a little gaming system controller. So now I'm going to hit the go to home button again. One more power failure test. So we're in the middle of a slew, going. Oh, lost the power, still there. And look, I'm rocking it pretty good. It's solid. It's not going anywhere. I trust this mount 100%. That's the nice thing about this mount. It's been developed, designed, and by ZWO. ZWO designed the mount. They made the mount. They also made the ASIAIR. They designed the ASIAIR. They work flawlessly together. I'm going to apply the power back together. You hear the beep, it powering back on. I'm going to push that go to home button again. 3-second hold. And now it's going back to the home position. All right. So now let me pause here. I'm going to see if there's any more questions or if there's any questions about the ASI Mount app. And so just to follow up on that, just the RA axis has braking. The DC axis does not need the braking, and you can see it worked flawlessly on that power failure test. So in conclusion, the ASI mount can be used without connection to the AM5 as a Sky Atlas. The app's a nice and quick way to update the mount's firmware and the hand controller firmware. That's one of the big things with my other mounts that I hated, was bringing my computer out, trying to update the firmware, trying to get an internet connection. But with this, you can just update it right through the app. So you don't need a computer to do this. And how about any questions about ASI mount, or any other questions I can ask before or answer before we move on to the ASIAIR? And this is my favorite part coming up. And I can't see, I have a bunch of lights here in front of me, but can't really tell if it's clear or not, but I'll see. So let's go to the questions. Tariq says, in summer it goes up to 45 to 50 degrees daytime, even if 36 to 40 degrees with humidity, it increases that even more. And is ZWO going to offer a PS for this mount, or will it need to be third party only? Oh, okay, so power supply you're asking. Um, they offer that 12-volt 5 amp power supply for the cameras. You can actually use that for the mount as well. And I prefer the ZWO, and this isn't a sales pitch. I prefer the ZWO 12-volt 5 amp power supply because it's usually better than what I order off Amazon. And I've received several power supplies that were dead on arrival. So since that, I just order the ZWO power supplies. And Francois, yes, I use the AVX tripod for more stability. And that's just a personal preference. I've seen people and I've seen tests uh, over in China with the carbon fiber tripod and a weight in the weight sling. However, just my personal preference, because I don't want my mount to crash or my scope to crash over. So just that extra security for me. All right. And Greg, he's asking, is it preferred to power the air off the AM5, the AM5 off the air, or power them separately? And Greg, I power them separately. That's my preferred method. The only time I will, and this is, like I said, this is a new mount to me, and it has that 5 amp. My test mount didn't have it before, the 12-volt 5 amp output. However, with the ASIAIR and with solar imaging and planetary imaging, I'll be using the output to power the ASIAIR, just because I'm not using a cooled camera. So that won't be an issue at all. And Scott's asking, is the handbox required to connect the phone app to the mount? Uh, the hand controller, I'm assuming is the same thing you're talking about. Yes, the hand controller is required to connect the phone app to the mount. However, if you're just going out to look at the sky, you don't need the the AM5 connected to use the ASI mount. And Ivan's asking, what is the difference between the home position and zero positions you mentioned? So right now, home and zero positions are the same. And Vic loves tracking rocket launches from 50 miles away from Cape Canaveral. Is there any way at all to do this with this or any mount? So Vic, I would say, because you have 1440x for the max speed, you have plenty of speed in fast mode. And the cool thing about it is this hand controller. Let me put the hand controller back on it just in case you missed it earlier. I love this rocker switch. This rocker switch allows me to slew the mount really easily and quickly and accurately. So that's why I'm looking forward to tracking ISS with this because it's almost like a video game when I'm moving around. And Yuchi says, I want to mount my RASA 8 on the AM5. Do you think I need a counterweight? And Yuchi, as long as you're using a stable mount and or a carbon fiber tripod with a counterweight in the bag or a stable platform, I don't see why you wouldn't be able to do that. And Ivan, is there a park position also? And the park position right now, there hasn't been anything set up or developed yet, but I don't know if ZWO will implement that with the ASCOM driver for those who are using Nina or another imaging software. Okay. All right. So we did the power failure check where I pulled the power. And now, how about some fun with the ASIAIR Plus? So I have it all hooked up now. I'm just going to grab my iPad. So I'm powering on the ASIAIR. And you can see I'm just using the ASIAIR. And I just have to wait. The ASIAIR Plus takes a little bit to start up. So I'm just waiting for the signal to connect. And you'll hear that happy tone from the ASIAIR Plus. There it is. And now I'm scanning, and just like that, I'm connected. So right on the main screen here, you can see my latitude and longitude. If anyone wants to come visit me, have some star parties out here in the northern Adirondacks. Using the AM5 mount, you can see there's different supported mounts that are available. Let's go back to the good one. There we go, AM5. My Gear 80, my Starfield Optics Gear 80 is a 385 millimeter focal length scope, and my guide scope is a 60 millimeter, 240 millimeter. I'm using the ASI 2600 Pro, and you can see I have a 462 MC camera connected, which is my guide camera. I also have the EFW and the EAF connected. So now I'm going to click enter, and here's the beautiful ASIAIR interface. So to connect to the mount, I'm going to go to the Wi-Fi settings, and you can see here, I'm going to turn ports 3 and 4 off just because I'm not using them. In Wi-Fi settings, I'm in 2.4 gigahertz, and I'm connected to the ASIAIR, and automatically connected to. So to connect to the Wi-Fi signal, and you can see, let me switch back to here. You can see all I have connected is my hand controller and the power port, power supply to the AM5. I'm completely wireless from the AM5 to the ASIAIR. So going back into the ASIAIR app, I go to station mode. You can see Right here's the AM5 or AMH5AB1E0. That's how I'm connecting through to it. Now let me try. All right, so now I'm going to do a split screen here. And then you can see there's a controller here, which I can manually move the mount. And you can adjust the slew speed. And in the ASIAIR, just like the ASIMOUNT, there's a planetarium. So I'm going to zoom out on the planetarium. And the same thing, let's go. Let's go to Vega over in the eastern sky. So we have Vega here. Remember, I can click Go Object, or I can go Cross, and Go Cross would be where the red box is. So there's the cross there. But I'm on Vega. I'm going to tell it to go to the object. So now we zoom out, we're going to see that blue box going, and that's the scope. Let me zoom out a little bit. We go out and then back in, and now you can see I'm lined up there on it. So now what I would do, and I still don't have clear skies. It's clouded over, so I can't do a test. But that's a good video for the next live video. I'll do a live one going through the ASIAIR. So what I would do is I would plate solve it. We do like a 5-second exposure, which isn't going to give me anything, but it'll show you how fast the download speeds are when I'm connected like this. There you go. And that's my 2600 mm, so it's extremely fast. So now what I would do is click plate solve, and it's not going to find anything because I'm clouded over here and I have the lens cap on. But you can see it's telling me my field of view, the sensor size, and I'm just going to click cancel. But once it does plate solve it, I would click sync to mount, and then once I sync to the mount and I go back in here and tell it to go to Vega again, it would be right on it. There we go. Okay. So let me just go see if there's any questions on this while I have the ASIAIR up, if there's anything anybody wants to see in the ASIAIR app. But I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I'll go into the AM5 settings here. You can see you can do the meridian flip with the AM5. The meridian flips are all flawless with the ASIAIR. You turn go to auto center on, so when you tell it to go to a target, it will center it. You have the tracking. I've never had any tracking issues with the AM5. I know some mounts, some different companies, they have issues with the ASIR where the tracking's been turning off or turning on when it's not supposed to, but I have not had any issues whatsoever with the AM5. It's always been reliable and 100% working effectively for me. And you can see and switch the side reel to solar to lunar. And then I'll do go to home again, but I'll wait on that. All right, so let me go to the questions to see if there's any more questions. Okay, so Scott says, does the hand controller joystick always navigate intuitively? Often it's hard to do the RA deck math when a hand controller arrow links directly to the RA or deck axis. Some mounts like the RST-135 will always allow you to navigate Alt as even in equatorial mode. So I found this joystick uh, to move very smooth and nicely. It does, sometimes you do have to try to figure out which way is which when you're moving the joystick, but because of the rocker switch, it's actually very simple and easy to learn and to use on that. And Jim said, nice video, TJ. Really makes me want one now. And this is a big tease tonight because I'm clouded out and I'm all set up. And all I have to do is throw it in the polar alignment, polar align, and I'm good to go tonight. And I'm all set up out here with power, this camera, the scope. And I just wish I could get out there tonight to see how this is working. I'm anxious to see how this mount guides. And then Andrew is in Melbourne, Australia, and he has friends in Burlington, Vermont. We're coming over to see them in the eclipse in 2024. With the lower weight of the AM5, I'd be half tempted to bring it with me. Andrew, if you're coming up to Burlington, that's just on the other side of the lake from me. Get in touch with me, and I'd love to have you over. I'm trying to get the ZWO team to come over from China for this event. It'll be a great time. Maybe we could have a big party in my backyard. I know April here will be a little cold and the chances of it being cloudy. I'm on a tall, I don't want to say a mountain, but I'm on a hill and the weather is very favorable for me. Whereas over in Burlington, Burlington's always clouded out from the lake clouds and the lake, the moisture off the lake. So you're welcome to come on over here, Andrew. And then Mike asked, does it pull the location from the hand controller, tablet, or some sort of GPS? And I'm assuming it's pulling the GPS off the phone because I'm connected to the phone. And then Tom says, can you connect the AM5 to the ASIAIR directly via a USB cable? And yes, you can do that. The AM5 does connect to the ASIAIR with with the USB cable, and you don't even need the hand controller if you're connecting that way. You can eliminate the hand controller and just run the ASIAIR directly to the AM5 with the USB. And then Harold said, "Thank you for your time doing this live presentation. Question: is ZWO working on a rotator? Thanks." And to answer that, Harold, I don't know. I know ZWO is always innovating the astrophotography field, and just switch so you can see me. So ZWO is always innovating the astrophotography field, and I'm sure they're going to be having several new products come and uh, additional new products, new developments, and new game changers for the astrophotography field. So I'm sure there's going to be more technology coming, more devices, rotators, uh, maybe even I would love to see a ZWO flat panel developed. My flat panel works well, but it would be neat to have one also from ZWO. Oh, ZWO jumped in and said we are doing that, so stay tuned. So that answers that on the rotator. There's stay tuned for more information on that. I guess they're gonna let the cat out of the bag on that one. Okay. So any other questions on this? It's 10:16 p.m. here Eastern time in northern Adirondacks. So 10:16 a.m. in China on, let's see, Sunday. All right. So I'm just hanging out, waiting to see if anybody has anything for me, any questions. Do you want to see anything in the ASIAIR app while I have it up? We'll switch over to the ASIAIR camera. There we go. ASIAIR screen back up. I love this device. I love the AM5. I love the ASIAIR Plus. It's a game changer for me. Just to show you the ASIAIR Plus, you have the eMMC, and I have the USB drive in, so I can save to either Target. For planetary, I save to the eMMC for higher frame rates and speeds for solar imaging. And then for deep space, I save to the USB drive. So that way in the morning, I can just pull my USB drive out and go to town with editing the images. Mark Sellers says, "Take my money." Anything in particular you're looking for, Mark? Tariq says it's 6:16 a.m. here in the UAE. And William said, when using the hand controller to control the movement, is the speed determined by how far the joystick is pressed? And let me just go to show you that. So I'm going to go back to the fast mode. So I can give little bursts. Yep, so it does. It does change the speed, so how far over you are with the rocker switch. So if I go over slightly, I'm creeping slow with little bursts. But then if I go all the way to the right, now we're at full speed slew. And let's see, Bob Waterfield, morning. Steve, you're already anxiously waiting, and now you want one even more. And it's well worth the wait. I absolutely love this mount. I love the Pier here. I love this whole setup. It's solid, it's rugged. It's going to do a lot of good for me. So I need a clear sky for the all sky alignment to show that. Um, in my next video, I'll do one with the ASIAIR and with the lining for the sky like that. So on that note, I've been on for 2 hours, 26 minutes. I'm getting a little bit of a light sprinkle here in the northern Adirondacks, a little passing shower, nothing to dust off. It's just spitting a little bit. But let me see if there's any more questions. I don't mind sitting out here. The scope's all covered up, the gear's all protected. A little moisture's not going to hurt anything. Let's see. So, Mark, I'm going to do another video for you. I said this just a minute ago, but I'll be back on live. I built a studio here, and I got some software, some technology to do some more videos. Maybe even throw together some image processing tutorials for everybody, free of charge um, for all of our ZWO users. Because obviously I'm in a backyard imager just like you all are. I like to have fun, like to image, and I like to help you all out as well. And Mike Gibbs, anything unique, different with the AM5 on the ASIAIR Plus? Unique and different with the AM5 on the ASIAIR Plus. I can say the ASIAIR Plus and the ASIAIR Pro and the original ASIAIR all work flawlessly with the AM5 mount. It's a lot of fun to use, and you don't have to worry about a lot of the bugs that other mount companies have, just because ZWO developed the AM5 and they developed the ASIAIR, so they work hand in hand together. And the last comment of the night tonight, Excellent job, TJ. ZWO Star Party would be a sales bonanza, and I would actually love to have a Star Party. So if anybody, maybe in the future we can put together a Star Party. There's lots of dark places, dark areas here in the Northern Adirondacks, and I'd love to host people. I'd love to have get together with you all and do some imaging. Um, so maybe in the future we'll all get together and maybe bring ZWO China over. So for backyard permanent observatory type setup, will it make sense to have an AM5 over, say, a EQ6R or Ioptron mounts? The, I think, in my personal opinion, and this is just my personal opinion, I think a backyard permanent observatory, I mean, you're it's hard to say because obviously I love the AM5, but if I'm mounted on a pier in an observatory and I have the room for counterweights, I have the room for balance, and it's a heavier scope, I would go for a German equatorial mount. However, for portability, this is a game changer. If I'm throwing this in my hiking backpack, I would just go right out into the woods and up into the mountains with the AM5. So a dome or a roll-off shed, I would recommend probably a German equatorial mount with a heavier scope. But for the smaller grab-and-go setup, I would use the AM5 any day. All right. Thank you, Ron, and thank you, Eric. All right. So on that note, it's 2 hours, 30 minutes, and I'm going to sign off. So everybody take care, be safe, have a good day, good evening, good morning, and I'll see you out there under the dark skies. Good night.